and a good Wednesday evening to you. Friends, Romans, countrymen, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, whether you're down the street, around the corner, across America, or somewhere around this great big world, thank you for tuning in tonight. We have another interesting guest. Of course, all of our guests are interesting. And as you know, we have them from all walks of life, from all around the world. And let me say this before we go any further. Saturday night, live from New Zealand, we will be having a group on called the Hybrid Blues. Their new album will be released midnight. I want to say Sunday morning, Saturday night, midnight, midnight, whatever day that is, Saturday night, Sunday morning, midnight. That album will be released, and we have exclusive rights to send those tunes out across the airways. So we'll be up there, up there on the radio. I don't know why it's up there, but we'll be on the radio with the Hybrids' new, brand new album out of New Zealand on Saturday night. We'll have them on a live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It'll already be Sunday afternoon in New Zealand. So you figure all that stuff out. So that's just a little note. Tonight, Florence Ann Romano, the Windy City Nanny. I like that. I like that. Ed, welcome, brother. How are you doing?
Hey, listen, I appreciate today, George. Last week I was sidekick. Week before, I think you just called me piece of garbage or something. So, just by you calling me a normal name, I feel like almost, like fourth.
Normal? You almost feel normal?
I think you're about, you should, if it were in the Constitution, you would have said I'm 4/5 a person now. So thank you.
But you see, Ed, you've been on here so long with me, everybody knows you by now. And,
well, hopefully there's a couple extra viewers that haven't heard the same tired jokes.
That's true. You see what he's got up there tonight? Ed Temple, America's #1 school choice advocate, which he is. But I never know what he's going to have on that label until I see him pop up there on the screen. Sometimes it's America's #1 sidekick. Sometimes it's co-host, but you just never know. But it's good to see you, buddy.
Okay, well, thank you. It's about time you're glad to see me. I've always been glad to see you, George.
You're welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, our guest tonight, Florence Ann Romano. Thank you so much for being with us and putting up with all this silliness right from the get-go.
I love it. It's already my favorite place to be. It's wonderful. I love silly. More of it. Let's have it. Everything's too serious these days.
Isn't that the truth? Them serious people, they scare me. I could be serious for about 30 seconds and then I start to scare myself. But from the Windy City, the Windy City Nanny. I like that. How did you come up with that?
Well, I was a nanny for 15 years and I hail from Chicago. So it just kind of was a natural moniker, I guess you could say. It gives you that Mary Poppins feel and that geography.
So before we go too far, tell us a little bit about your background. Of course, you grew up there in Chicago, so on and so forth. And then how in the world do you become a nanny?
Well, I was 11 years old and started as a mother's helper. But even before that, I think I was destined for the role because I used to say to my mom, "Hey, Mom, can you take me to the hospital so I can have my baby?" And what I meant by that was, can you take me to the toy store so I could pick out a baby doll? And then I would come home and I would make birth certificates for all my baby dolls. So I think I was baby obsessed even when I was a baby myself. Right. And so then, became a mother's helper at the age of 11 and transitioned to being a babysitter like a lot of young girls do. And really just fell in love with children and everything they represented. And it really was a natural catalyst for me to become a nanny. And I spent 15 years doing it. And it was the time of my life. And then after the winds change, as Mary Poppins would say, you stay until the winds change. I stepped back from being a nanny and started, being a child care advocate, really, and wanted to talk about the child care crisis that we have in America today and how to help families bring people into their villages from a place of values, depending what the values of those families are, to help you raise your children. And so that's really my platform today.
Ed?
Yeah. So let's. Was being a nanny? Was it a form of? Don't take this the wrong way. Was it a form of birth control?
I still have no children, so what does that mean? I don't know. Maybe I had enough of the kids. I don't know about that. But you learn a lot about yourself and about children and about being an adult and about being responsible and all of that by being a nanny. And so I think I always thought in my head what my mom always said to me growing up: you take what we did right as parents and you use it. And you take what we did wrong as parents and you lose it. And I think I realized that as a nanny, that there were things I did right and wrong, and there are things I saw parents do that I felt were right and wrong. And you kind of take and extract from that and put it in the bottle and shake it up. And then that becomes, your parenting style or your philosophy about parenting.
And what, when you're doing when you were a nanny, are these middle income parents? Are they? Were they? Did they have variety to it? Was it?
Yeah.
Very well to do, and so on and so forth.
Stretch the gamut, socioeconomics across the board. And I have to say that there were more common denominators than not, even seeing, what they came from in terms of wealth. The first and foremost thing that every single family had in common was that they just wanted me to love and protect their child. And so it didn't matter, what they came from in terms of money or anything like that or background.
All right. So I'm going to ask you a question then.
Sure.
Because this, okay. So,
is that me? Oh goodness. Sorry. That is me.
Okay. Mine was buzzing too. I'm
so sorry.
All right. George does that all the time.
I forget it's attached to the computer. Pardon me.
Well, you're at the funny farm, so we hear these bells and ding-a-lings and all that all the time. We don't even pay no mind to it.
Oh, you're right.
Well, a long time ago, and maybe now too, in South Africa, there was for a while there's nannies in particular. Actually, the rich white families used to have black nannies, and that's one of the things that led to the end of the system that they had. Of course, it's kind of backfiring because it's just going in reverse now in South Africa. But the bottom line is the nannies became more of the mother and mother.
Oh, Ed, you broke up a little bit there.
Broke up a little bit, Ed.
That you said the nannies became the mothers was the last thing I heard.
Yeah, the nannies became, the families, even though they were, quote unquote, and George believes in races and I don't. I believe there's only one race. But the families, these wealthy families, their mothers were black women from other parts of town. And these black women, even though, at the time, clearly a racist society in South Africa.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons why they were able to dissolve a lot of their racism, because these nannies, these black women, were basically the mothers of these children. And so these kids grew up and they didn't have the same feelings that the generations previous had. Is there a fear that being a nanny, is there a fear that being a nanny, you become more of a mother than the parents themselves,
I think that there's a lot of guilt that comes from parents when you have a nanny or a caretaker in your home or helping you raise your children, because they think to themselves, okay, oh gosh, that nanny or that caretaker, my children are going to love them more. And I haven't found that to be the case, honestly, in terms of what are the results of having someone help you raise your child.
Yeah.
I always say you need to look at a nanny or a caretaker, or whomever it is, like an aunt or an uncle or a godmother or a godfather, someone that's in their life to help guide them, to be a role model for them, to someone to love and protect them. And I always look at parents who feel like they're being competitive with the nanny in some sort of way and say, don't you want your child to be surrounded by as much love as possible? Right. So if that's the case, then you shouldn't feel competitive. But at the same time, I'm also a former nanny that says, I believe that parents need to be active parents. You need to be an active parent in that child's life. The nanny is not your replacement. You are there as a unit, the parent and the nanny together being a unified front, helping raise those children and being an extension of the values, being each other's eyes, ears, and heart.
Do you have don't you have a series? Uh, let me play a little clip of that.
Okay.
If I don't push the wrong buttons here. I've been noted to do that. Let me go up here. All right, I got to hold my tongue just right so I get this thing right here. There's some more of them bells and whistles and things.
That was my fault.
That's all right, Ed. Yeah, we're gonna get back here. Okay, let's see what happens. No sound?
There should be sound that you would hear me talking on it, but I can tell you what's going on. So my series is on YouTube called Windy City Nanny, and I go into 12 different homes in Chicago that have 12 different scenarios in terms of what's happening in their family. So I talk to a mom who's lost her identity to motherhood. I talk to another mother who is parenting with a chronic illness. I talk to a father who tragically lost his wife. There she is, tragically lost her wife and left with 2 young girls. I talk to a mom who's dealing with postpartum depression. I talked to 2 fathers who are raising an adopted son. So we go through all the different scenarios that you could possibly think of in this world. That child actually there is a little girl who has autism, which is special to my heart because my brother is 17 months younger than I am and has autism. And we go through the family dynamics and what they're struggling with currently in their family. And I try to help them solve their issues in their family and give them concrete ways to help solve those problems, and also most importantly be there to listen and to hear them and make them feel understood.
What happens and when you was talking about Ed asked you if some people feels that maybe they love the nanny more or this or that. I guess going in there has to be some parameters set. We as parents, these are the rules that we've laid down.
Mm-hmm.
And you run in, kids. Well, hey, Dad, can I have this or can I go there?
Right.
Did you ask your mom? Okay, so you go ask your mom. You say, Mom, Dad said to come and ask you. It's all right with him if you say okay. One of those type of things. Run into that
against each other. Sure. And do you feel that? Have I seen that? I would say that. Yeah, of course, that the kids are going to try to get away with anything that they can, because the outsider, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can play this nanny for a fool. But, the important thing I always say is that when you are vetting the nanny, when you're interviewing the nanny, that you, the family, you have to know thyself. Know what your values are as a family. How do you feel about discipline? How do you feel about nutrition? How do you feel about politics, religion? Is this going to be discussed with the nanny? Do you want the nanny to discussing his or her own views with the children? Are you going to be hiring a nanny that is literally going to be an extension of your eyes, ears, and heart, of your values, of politics, of religion, of discipline, of culture, whatever it is? I am not here to judge what each family does. I'm here to say to them, you need to figure out where you stand, though, because you can't bring someone else in to help you raise your children if you don't know where you are and where you want to go and what sort of influence you want for your children.
Was it sometimes difficult when you were talking to parents? I mean, were there times that you thought this isn't going to gel right?
When I was interviewing families, I certainly knew when I felt like it was the right fit and when it wasn't the right fit. We always think about it from the parent's point of view, about the parent hiring the nanny. The nanny also needs to be in tune with whether or not that's the right fit. So just as I suggest that parents are doing the vetting and doing the self-evaluation of what their values are, the nanny needs to be doing the same thing too. I'd say that the hardest part was not necessarily finding which family to work for. It was how to balance the relationship between the children and the parents, because you want both to trust you. You want the parents to trust you and the children. And sometimes as the nanny, you're seeing a lot of things that are happening in the home that maybe the parents aren't. regarding their children. So how do you keep the trust of the children while going to the parents and saying, we need to discuss some things that I'm seeing?
Wow. Ed?
Yeah. When you have situations that you don't think you can handle, who do you go to?
When I don't think I can handle on my own as the nanny, are you saying?
There's just, you're thinking, hey, I just in this situation, and maybe I should find somebody who maybe has experience with this.
Well, the first person I call is my mother. That's the first one because she's raised 4 kids and she knows all about life. But I'm blessed to be around a lot of different people who have had a lot of different life experiences than I have. And so if it isn't something that I personally have dealt with. Now, I have had a lot of life experience. I know what it's like to grow up with a sibling with special needs. I know what it's like to grow up with your grandparents living with you. I, understand how it is to have to deal with parents when it comes to opposite sides of the discipline kind of seesaw. So I do come to the table with a lot of experience, but I'm never a person that ever has backed away from asking for help like you're mentioning, Ed. I learned very early on in life, you have to know what you don't know. And so when I don't know, I go and find a person that does and can help me sort through the problem. But I don't just go to the expert and say, okay, since they're the expert, all done, I'll just do what they say. I have to vet what they're saying and then see if I'm applying it to the situation properly, depending on my experience with the family and children.
As far as being a nanny, is that an individual thing? Is it is there some type of nanny network, or is there some kind of where it's an agency, or how does it work?
Social media today makes you feel like there's a lot of experts out there who are ready to give you their opinions. And sometimes, this social media can definitely be a great place to garner a lot of advice. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to actually hiring a nanny, you can go to an agency, you can go to like a Sitter City or a care.com or something like that that's online. And then, state by state, they have a lot of agencies and they have a lot of boutique agencies that you could go to. But I always say that I like to kind of approach finding a nanny like you would, with a blind date. You would want to be set up by mutual friends because it's kind of like a built-in verification process. You're like, all right, I trust this person they'd probably turn me on to the right person or someone that shares my values or shares my, point of views in life or things like that. So you can definitely go a lot of different routes, but it has to be the right thing for you. I think referral is the safest way.
I have never really thought about nannies. We raised 4 kids, got 11 grandkids, 3 great grandkids. So we have us quite a herd.
Amazing.
But I've never thought about a nanny. But just in these first 20 minutes of us talking, I don't want to be a nanny when I grow up.
You would be great, George. Why wouldn't you want to? You've raised all these kids. You have these grandchildren. You have experience in spades.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that make him a manny?
It would make him a manny. Exactly. Be a manny.
Look at me.
Oh, no. I just see a whole lot of wisdom and love there. That's what I see.
Yeah. The thing about being a grandparent is you can give them back.
There you go. But I also did get to give the kids back as the nanny. They weren't mine. I gave them back at the end of the day too.
Did you stay with people that you were a nanny, or did?
I never lived in their house. No, I never lived in their house. That was, and there are different situations, au pairs, nannies that do that. It was just never something that I wanted to do. I felt that I was playing a role in that family's life that they needed. And it never appealed to me.
Now, you've been doing this for 15 years, or you did this for 15 years.
I did that for 15 years. Yes.
So when you did your first gig, excuse me for using that term, but I deal with a lot of musicians and bands and stuff. But when you did your first gig, and then 15 years later, do you stay in touch, or have you stayed in touch with those first little ones that you were nanny to?
Every single one. And I'm even one of my nanny girls, my little girls, she just got married a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, it's thrilling to watch them grow up, even after you're no longer looking after them. Just like I would imagine with parents, they feel like their kids eventually become their friends. It was the same situation for me, even though I started off as more of a friend than their parents did, but there certainly became a different bond on the other side of being their nanny.
That had to give you a warm, fuzzy feeling inside.
Oh, I'll tell you, one of the best stories ever is one of the little girls, actually the one that just got married. I saw her at a wedding a few years ago, and I hadn't seen her in a while because she lives on the East Coast. And it was like a movie. We from the opposite sides of the dance floor, we went running toward each other, and she hugged me, and she pulled back, and she had tears in her eyes. And I looked at her, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "You are still the voice in my head all these years later." And I just started crying because that's the holy grail of a nanny. You know, you don't know what sort of effect you're going to have on these kids, but to sit there and see this beautiful girl who's so successful in so many ways in life, and to think that I still in some way have influenced her even in her adulthood, I couldn't ask for a larger blessing.
Wow. Ed?
Yeah. So, and I heard you say one of the words or phrases you said is, you know, if you don't know something, just say, I don't know.
Right. There's no shame in that. Yeah.
Right. And then your mentors, what are you looking for when someone's mentoring you, or if you become a mentor, what do you think a mentor should be out to do? What are you looking for? You obviously don't want someone just agrees with you, but
no,
what do you think a good mentor does?
I think a mentor is someone that tries to reach inside of you and pull out your potential. And so that doesn't mean that they're necessarily, like you said, going to share all of your same values or have all your shared life experience or even agree with everything that you say. But I think in life, I really generally believe that in life, every single person on this earth just wants to feel understood. And I think in terms of a mentor, your job as a mentor is to help that person feel understood and to help guide them where they want to go, not where you want them to go, but to help guide them in terms of where they want to go and help give them the tools to get there.
A lot of parents today are tattered, battered, worn, and torn. And especially now in this day and age in which we live.
Right.
It seems like they're just getting knocked from pillar to post, up, down, back and forth.
Right.
And they're looking for answers.
Right.
And sometimes people are so busy, so frustrated, so battered and tattered that they just can't step away from the noise or the actions that's going around,
right?
So they can listen. What do you tell people like that?
Well, I think what you just said is a very important point, that there's a lot of white noise out there. And I think that we have a lot of influences out there that sometimes are not positive. You know, we live in a very, very media-centric world. And I think that we have to be careful about what we allow ourselves to absorb, and how much we give, how much of our energy we give to what we hear and see. And I think we've forgotten that discernment is an important skill that I don't think that we're practicing a lot of today. And I think parents, because of so much media coming at them, so many opinions, so much criticism, so much shame, that they forget to look inward and they forget to figure out, you know, what's best for my family. And also they forget to trust themselves also in the process, that they're going to know what's best for their children. Sometimes you need to shut it off and you need to get back to center. And whether that center for you is meditation or it's prayer or whatever it is, I think that you have to find something bigger than you to ground you. And I think we've lost sight of that sometimes in the world today.
On that video, and I'm going to play it again because it's going to work. But anyhow, on that video, you told the lady one thing: primary, above all, take care of yourself.
Yes, sir.
I thought that's good, super duper wisdom right there. Take care of yourself, because if you don't, what happens?
If you don't, you can't take care of anybody else. I mean, I'm a natural caretaker, but for people that even aren't natural caretakers, you still have to take care of yourself, because my hope is that everybody in this world is contributing to society for the higher good. You know, I believe that my role in life, and this doesn't have to be everyone else's role in life, but I believe my role in life is just to be at the service of others. And that's not just as the Windy City Nanny. If I didn't have this platform, I would still feel that that was my role in life, was to serve others in whatever the capacity I could be most helpful. But in order for me to do that, I have to make sure I'm taking care of myself too. And so it's not selfish, it's necessary. There's a fine line between being selfish and taking that inventory of yourself and making sure you're staying healthy mentally and emotionally.
Yeah. So when you say, obviously the Windy City, we're talking about Chicago. Chicago, the only thing we hear about Chicago nowadays is how many people were killed over the weekend. And so, if you're, given if there's many parents right now in the metro Chicago area right now, they're listening to you. And obviously you've been, not too many people have experience living with many families over 15 years. I mean, almost zero. So, what have you learned as a nanny that might be helpful to those in particular, maybe single parents, or even if they're not? But what advice do you have? Maybe you have the opportunity right now here on the George Espinlove Show to help end all the violence, because you're going to give the advice that's going to turn it around.
Oh my, that's some heavy duty stuff there, but it starts at home. What can I say? It starts at home. And I think a lot of the reason we see what we're seeing in Chicago is because the home is broken in a lot of these places. And the emphasis on home is not there. I'm not saying that a single mom or dad cannot raise wonderful, beautiful, tolerant, compassionate, loving children. I'm saying that what happens inside the walls of that home is important. The people that influence you and your children is important. How you raise your children in terms of the values that they have, in terms of how they treat other people, how they treat themselves, that's all important. And, being a parent is very difficult. Raising children, whomever you are, is very difficult. And so you have to remember that you are shaping these children. You have to lead by example. So whatever is happening in these homes, in these places where there is so much gang activity, there is a culture of violence, there is a lack of respect for human life or anything in general in terms of human beings kind of in these neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. You have to look at the culture. You have to look at what's going on there. We can't just get up on a pulpit and say we need to end systemic racism. We have to look deeper than that and see what's actually happening. And I believe the answer is more simple than we think it is. Yeah. And the answer starts at home.
Yeah. Scripture says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he shall not depart from it. I have, when you have your first child, it's your first child, so you never had one before,
right?
And I always scratched my head and I thought, Lord, why couldn't you just tape a little, like some instructions on his behind or her behind, so when they come out, you have a manual, at least one of those quick start things, like you get right. When you get a quick start thing. Because you've never been a parent before. This is, the baby's new. You're new to the baby. Everything's new.
Right.
And then I think, wonder what it would be if you didn't have grandma and grandpapa around.
Right.
Or I wonder what it would be if you didn't have an uncle or an aunt or somebody that's already done this thing. That would be a scary, scary feeling. What do you do when they get sick in the middle of the night and you're walking them and they're crying and they just, and all those things. So it does start in the home. And I agree. I've never heard anyone say that, but you said it the best that I've ever heard. The answer is simpler than we think it is.
George, you probably grew up in two family home, I assume, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I did, about 8 years old or so. We were in a single, our home was a single parent home. But my thing is, though, all the stats, if you want to, you can go down the line, stat. I mean, the stats, we should be in this country, if we were really trying to make a difference, be encouraging two parent families, and not just two parent families that actually get married with the intention to stay married.
Yeah.
And the program should be set up. If you want to spend some government money or private money, whatever the money, I don't really care. If you want to spend money on something that would be a good investment, it would be trying to find ways to get marriage counts and keep the two, the intact family together, so you wouldn't have 50,000 extra places you have to go, for example, for holiday festivities, or you have to miss out on some, and you wouldn't have, just the idea that mom and dad together as a team are just, they share the load. It's a lot less challenging than and even the financial load, but it's, the stats bear out, because it's just, the two working together, it's still hard. One working alone, you're talking about near impossible. In particular, a working parent. So it's just, and even if they're not a working parent, then the income's not there to, it's just, you're just way behind the 8 ball when you're a single parent. And so that ought to, we ought to be, if anything needs to be pushed in this country, that ought to be something that goes to the top of the line, and everybody's afraid to do it because they're worried about the sensitivities to it. But the bottom line is, if we're a country of data and intelligence and wisdom, then there's no doubt about that. The stats bear out that an intact family is the best option for a child. Obviously, that intact family, the presumption is they're not, drunk and arguing and fighting with each other. That's not what I mean. I mean an intact family that's doing things the right way.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Ed. I do. I think that stability is important. And if you can't have that stability, because things happen in life, I understand it. One of my big platforms, I say my 3 pillars are always, build a village, ask for help, and let love in. And asking for help is really important, because sometimes you need to bring someone in that is going to offer something to your child or your children that you can't. So if you can't give them everything, then I think that's when you look for the people in your family or your close circle of friends that can be a good influence for your children. I understand life is not perfect, and families have their challenges, but you have to be confident enough and humble enough to know what's lacking, and then try to fix it and try to fill in those nooks and crannies where you can, so you can give your children the best possible chance in life. And so, I agree with you that it does start in the home, and in a perfect world, it would be that we go back to this idea of the 2-person, 2-parent home. And I do believe we see great results from that. So if we can put more pressure on that, I agree. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And for those that say, oh gosh, it's too sensitive a topic to bring up, I'm not bashing at all the single parent homes at all. I'm just saying that in a perfect world, or in your best effort to give them the stability that you want, let's try to do that. Let's try to give them that stability, and let's start with that 2-parent home.
Yeah. What do you think in the case of your, being a nanny, what do you think if there's something that you could tell a parent that you've learned over these 15 years, obviously you've seen some big mistakes, you've seen some big success stories, you've seen things that worked and didn't work. What advice would you, if you just had a few things of advice, top 5 or something, and you say, all right, this is something is non-negotiable. What is it?
Well, I gave 3, which I want to go back to just because I do think it's important. The building your village part is important because no one's expecting you to do everything yourself. And village, like I said, growing up with my grandparents living in my house, they taught me more than I could have ever thought about learning in terms of myself and in terms of how I respected people, compassion, empathy, all those different things. So I think exposing your children to these people in the village is very important. And then asking for help, very important in order for you to be able to survive. We live in a world today where everyone thinks that they have to be super mom or dad, that they have to do everything on their own in order for them to be respected as a parent. And that is not true. Asking for help is the best thing you can do because you will be a better parent for it. And letting love in is probably my top one. Their love is in so many different forms today. Everyone defines love differently today, but I believe that the best thing we can do for our children is to show them love and for them to be loved. But they'll never learn it if they don't see it, if they don't feel it. So my number one advice for parents out there is really focus on the things that you're not learning in school. The qualities that you want your child to be growing up, that's what you need to focus on. During COVID and everything, people were saying to me, oh, they're so far behind in school. They're so far behind in this. And I'm like, you know what? Everyone's going to be in the same boat here. Okay. So yeah, they're going to be far behind, or they're going to, need to spend more time on their multiplication tables or whatever it is. For me, what was much more important was you have this extra time with your kids to maybe work on compassion. Work on how do you show empathy, work on how manners, work on tolerance, work on whatever it is that you want to work on. But these kind of intangible things that are kind of floating out there, that when you're going to sleep at night, you're like, I wish I had time to do this with my kids. I wish I had time to teach them this. I wish I had time to teach them to put others first. I wish I had time to teach them more about our religion or our culture or whatever it is. I'm more interested in that. That's what I think is going to make a more beautiful, fully formed, contributing member of society than one that's going to, excel in honors math. I don't know. That's just me.
I'm going to read between the lines a little bit. There are times when parents are vicariously living through their child or children. And sometimes they're not showing the affection.
Sure.
So the kid, maybe gets burned out, or maybe living somebody else's dream and not their own. Yep. And honestly, the love part would actually make a difference.
The love part does make a difference, and I also will go one step farther with that, though. I grew up in I had my mom and dad and my nana and papa. And, my father was hard on me. I'm not going to lie. My dad was hard on me. He definitely saw in me certain things that he saw in himself. And instead of encouraging me and making me feel better about my deficiencies in math or whatever it might be, he made me feel bad about it because he felt bad that he wasn't able to do those things well. So that, reflecting on your child like that can be quite dangerous, because then they grow up thinking badly of themselves when really it's not about them, it's about the parent. And I see that reflected in so many different idioms, so many different situations with parents where it's really not about the child as much as it is about the parent. And so I really would encourage parents and anyone who's involved in a child's life in terms of being a role model or taking care of children, that you really check yourself before you wreck yourself. Remember, what you're doing and what your role is in that child's life. And you want to give them the encouragement and the love to be able to go forth and, be the best version of themselves. That doesn't mean they need to be a straight A student. That doesn't mean they need to be what it is that you have dreamt up for them. You need to spend the time getting to know them and what they want to do in their lives and encourage them and give them the tools to do that and surround them with the people to influence them positively. So to your point, Ed, I do think that I see parents making that mistake where they're putting their hopes and dreams or their insecurities on their children. And then we wonder why years later they're having the issues that they're having, because what happened inside the walls of that home permeated the child in, let's be honest, a negative or positive way. And once they're older, that's when they start going inward and thinking, well, what's the origin of that? Where did that come from? And that's where you always laugh. Oh, they always blame the mother. Well, in this case, this girl was blaming the father. So, but I love my father. It's just that, he made mistakes. And I know that with my own children, I'm going to be very cognizant of that.
I call them helicopter parents.
That's definitely new today, for sure. The helicopter parent thing.
Yeah, I hover parents, where they hover,
Yeah,
right over a child, until it comes to the point that a lot of kids today can't solve a problem.
it's true.
Because don't worry, the pilot will take care of the problem. I'll take care of this. I'll take care of that. Do you know that's an Espinal term, the helicopter parents? But do you find that to be true or not? Or
I absolutely think it's true, but I think the reason why you see more helicopter parenting today is probably because they've gone too far. I think we live in a society today where we have no idea how to find balance. We have no idea how to, live by the phrase moderate, everything in moderation. So instead, we went from the latchkey parents where no one was paying much mind to the kids to now, they can't make a move without you knowing about it. So, I'm always going to be someone that advocates for the middle, because I always think that the truth lies somewhere in there, and the best parenting lies somewhere in the middle as well. So this helicopter parenting, as you're saying, there's a lot of reasons why they do it, but oftentimes I think it's because they think that if they don't take care of it, if they're not watching the kids, then they're going to do it wrong. They're afraid that their kids are going to fail. And that is the new F word today. Can I tell you? Failure. We can't talk about failure without anyone getting all upset about it. And I'm like, hey, failure is a big, important part of life. You need to learn to do that. Your kids need to learn to do that, because that's where growth comes from. So helicopter parenting, I do think, comes from parents being afraid that their children will fail in some way, shape, or form.
Edward?
Yeah, I do hear that. I hear parents will, they'll talk about, they may have more than one kid, and you can just hear the way they talk about one kid. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm just going to tune you out on that, because what you're basically saying is one kid is, effectively, the way you're coming across is this kid, he's the smart one, and this one's not so smart. So just recognize that. And I'm thinking to myself, that expectation that you have of them might have something to do with why they feel that way, So anyway, so I think to myself, boy, if you're coming across that way to me, I wonder how you're coming across to the kids. Clearly that vibe is hitting them and affecting them, and, maybe permanently. So that's just, I think it's a dangerous thing. I think you have to, I'd rather the parents play the kid up than make them feel like they can't do something.
There's a great saying that says, let your children hear the good things you say about them to other people. And I think that that's important. I also believe that competition and all those things are important too, that, not every kid deserves to get a medal.
Yeah.
That's not how the world works. So, there's, again, the truth lies in the middle. We've gone way too extreme in so many ways in this world. And we need to, the pendulum needs to swing back, and we need to find some sort of balance.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I and other people like to coach, because it's a great opportunity. And vast majority of our players, when you coach, are single parents, and with that, you have it's just an opportunity to get a male influence, and it's really funny. It's really funny because you watch you watch when the kid falls on the ground or does something where they're really not hurt, and they're just Oh, they're crying, and then mom wants to run over. I'm like, stay back.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you're making this worse.
Yeah.
I'm over here trying to distract the kid, ask him about it, what kind of shoes he's wearing, where he got them, and what are they doing? Oh, mommy, and I'm like, you just ruined the season.
Resilience. Resilience, perseverance, all these different things that, failure and bravery and all these things that you need to learn. You're right, Ed. You're learning them usually through sports or, on a field or in an extracurricular of some kind. And you have to allow your children to figure it out on their own. We are taught in school to analyze things, to critically think, to do all of that. And to your point earlier, George or Ed, pardon me, for whomever said it, that we're kind of taking that away from our children, giving them the chance to really learn that critical thinking skill. And we have to allow them to do that. I mean, they're not going to have mommy or daddy there all the time with them to help. Most of their life, they're not going to have mom or dad there to help pick them up off the field or do their homework for them or, stand up for them or any of that. There has to be an equilibrium to all of this. I believe in protecting your children and loving the snot out of them, but I don't believe in coddling them to the point where you're going to be inhibiting them from being a contributing member of society and a functioning adult.
Yeah, well, we've been so feminized in this country. LeBron played football. He was actually better at football in high school than basketball, and now he says, "Oh, I don't want my son to get hurt." So here we have this coddling, society where you're supposed to be ashamed to be masculine and rewarded if you're a female and you're not feminine, you're rewarded. So it's a very very confusing world we live in, and so. Here we have, men that are let's look at the NFL. I mean, you talk about softening things up. Yeah. I mean, you're getting free kick, football, fair catches. I mean, what the heck? Who would have ever thought? The most masculine sports you can think of is, trying, doing everything it can to soften itself up. But it's down the line. I mean, like you said, this everybody gets a trophy mentality. This you can't criticize anybody mentality. Well, that is unless you're a particular political party, then you can say whatever you want against them. But anyways, the bottom line is that the society is so confusing now and so difficult to just to confront it because we were talking about the village thing. Well, nowadays, heck, yeah, you say used to it was expected the neighbor would rat you out. Or get it, or you tell you to stop throwing rocks across the street and breaking the apartment windows. I mean, I didn't do that, right? Yeah, I did. Okay. So the bottom line is, but the neighbor catches you, you don't do it anymore. It's simple, right?
Right.
And nowadays, heck, people are afraid of each other. They won't say anything. They cover for them. The no snitch policy. So this is where we are. We're finding ways to cheat on everything. I mean, everything is It's a game of not taking any personal responsibility, losing the idea of work ethic. Everything comes down to these.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Technology for sure. Sorry, George, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say from the old guy. And I grew up in the 50s. And just to give you an example, we were different. And I know old people always say, back when I was young, we walked 35 miles to school and
no shoes on.
But
no shoes on.
Yeah, with no shoes. Yeah. We put our shoes over our shoulders so they wouldn't get wet. But anyhow, there's some truths that you can learn from the old people. And I'll give you one example. We hung out in the schoolyard. Kids from all over the neighborhood hung out in the schoolyard. That's where things were settled. That's where friends were made. That's where battles were fought. That the whole 9 yards went down there. I can remember one day I was in this fight, and me and this boy was tearing each other up, but he was tearing my behind up a little bit more than I was tearing his up. And my dad was working down at the church, which was just half a block down. And then he was coming home, and he walked through the schoolyard. And I was on my back. I remember on my back, and my head was turned, and I saw him walking through the schoolyard, and I thought, well, he'll come spare me this because I'm about ready. I'm about ready to wave the white flag. Joe just walked right on by, and I figured, well, I better get myself out of this. So it continued on. When I went home, and then after everything was over, you shook hands, you wiped the dirt off your face, the bloody nose, so on and so forth. You became the best of friends. I remember when I went home, he said, "How'd you make out?" And I said, "Well, I don't think it was too good. I don't think it was too bad." He said, "Okay." That's all he said was okay. Okay. And I'm thinking, from the old people. I mean, that's how things were done back then. And I'm not pushing violence and all these other things, but kids need to be kids nowadays, and just the little girls do what they do, the little boys do what they do. And if they get down in the dirt and they roll around and they fuss, I tell my grandkids when they're fussing with one another, they'll come and say, "Pop up," they're blah, 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 blah. I say, "Go play." That's all I tell them. Go play. They'll work it out. Kids have a way of working things out because they're kids.
Right.
And I'm not seeing that so much anymore today. I'm seeing somebody run to somebody, and then somebody sticking up for that, and then the other person, and before you know it, you got the adults at each other's throats fighting and this. It's just an upside down crazy world that we live in today. But you as a nanny, you got to nurture those young people.
Right.
Some of them were probably a little wee, and some of them were a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to nurture them. And like you said about the young lady that got married, that is a tremendous legacy that if you live one day or 100 years, those little people that are now big people are going to remember that for the rest of their life, because one person, you, had such a major impact on their life, and they'll carry those lessons that you imparted into them, and they'll pass them on and on and on and on. Who was it that said we earn our money one client at a time? Well, it's one person at a time. And I know that's the hard part. That's the hard work.
Right.
But I still say it's one person influencing another person, and everybody will be influenced either by good or by bad.
Right.
Agreed?
Agreed. And that's why raising kids is such a hard job, because you don't know what's going to stick with them. You don't know if it's, the bad thing that you said to them or the good thing. And it's funny, I had a teacher when I was in high school write on a test of mine that I was stupid. And she got fired after that. But I remember, years later, I struggled so much after that because she had told me I was stupid, and I know math was hard for me, and I let that teacher have all my power. I let that moment define me going forward. And I had someone very wise say to me one day, "How many times did that teacher call you stupid?" And I said, "Well, just the one time that you got fired." And she said, "Well, how many times since then have you called yourself stupid?" And I said, "Well, thousands." And that's when it really sunk in that I had given that teacher the power, and it was Eleanor Roosevelt that said, no one gets to make you feel inferior without your permission. Mm. And I think that when, I think back on that moment for me in school, I think how many times Mrs. Sagan's words have resounded in my head. And, I've let that be a playlist in my head instead of so many other moments that probably I should be thinking about that happened in high school. But you give it power, you give it air, you let it overtake you. And so I guess I'm saying that, I'm telling that story because, be careful what you say, because you don't know how it's going to attach to that child. So hopefully you say things that are going to attach to them in a positive way. But of course, there are going to be the things like what happened to me that are going to attach, and you're going to have to try like mad, try like heck for your life to get it off of you and to get it out of your head and out of your heart. So that's my advice to parents and to caretakers and to nannies alike is be very careful what you say and what you do, because they're watching and they're listening, and you don't know how it's going to affect them as they get older.
Little pitchers have big ears.
Isn't that the truth?
That's what my grandma used to say.
I love that.
And don't you have a book that's out about all this?
I have a book called Nanny and Me. It helps children understand the transition of being cared for by their parents to being cared for by a nanny or a caretaker. And it's told from the child's perspective. So it's there to help children through the transition, which oftentimes can be sometimes traumatic, sometimes be scary. And it's also there to be a tool for the parents to help them explain this transition and that it's going to be fun and full of love and they'll be safe and joyful.
So Nanny and Me, where do you go to buy that?
You can go to windicitynanny.com or any place they sell books. You can go on Amazon. I hear you can get it the next day or same day. I hear it makes a very good baby shower gift. Barnes & Noble, anywhere you can go and find it.
Okay. And is there other things that people can go to see you besides reading in the book?
You can go to the book, you go to my web series that you mentioned before, George, Windy City Nanny, which is on YouTube. But also please visit my website because I have blog after blog after blog that will help you figure out how to get through COVID, how to get through e-learning, how to keep your kids safe and happy and entertained, stuff for the grandparents, for the nannies, for the children. I'm also all over social media, Instagram. I always answer every DM. So Windy City Nanny, if you need anything at all, I'm here to help you.
And you got blogs on there and videos and anything you want to know.
Anything you need.
Windy City Nanny. I like that. Windy City Nanny. That's one of those things that you'll never forget. Windy City Nanny. Yeah.
Thank you, George.
It's just befitting or fitting or whatever. When we start talking about it, and you said, don't ever be afraid to admit that you don't know something. I've been saying for years, and I should trademark this thing. The only thing I know is I don't know. And the older I get, the only thing I know is I don't know. And the only thing I remember is I forgot.
Love that. Love.
Take a look at your screen down there. Will you pop that up for her?
Huh?
Will you pop that? I shared a screen. Can you pop that up real quick?
Yeah, let me put this up here. Okay.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Nanny and Me at Amazon.com. And I like that cover.
Thank you. It was inspired by two of the little kids that I nannied for, but the little boy is made in the image of my brother, Michael, and he carries a stuffed animal with him in the book. My brother, like I mentioned before, has autism, and he still carries around a stuffed animal with him today at 33 years old. So the little boy in the book has the same stuffed animal as my brother.
Let me ask you about that before we go. And I can't say that name. You're going to have to say it. So go ahead and say it and then tell me.
Misericordia. So yes, there's a home for adults here in Chicago for disabled adults, special needs adults, called Misericordia, and my family has been involved for like 30 years. My brother does not live there at Misericordia, but we support it very much. They do amazing things for adults with special needs. They give them purpose. They make them feel safe and loved. It is a very special place run by Sister Rosemary, who is just an angel from heaven and has dedicated her whole life to Misericordia. So if anyone's looking for any information on group homes, Misericordia here in Chicago is stupendous.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Wow. Time flies by so fast.
I know. It was so fun.
You are the first nanny that I've ever spoken to. I mean, real nanny. You know what I mean?
You won't forget it now, George, will you? You won't forget that.
No, I won't. and that's all the more reason why we're going to have you come back again.
Well, anytime, it would be an honor. Anytime. It's so much fun hanging out with you guys. We got to be a little silly, got to be a little serious. We got to have the whole thing. I like it.
Since you're in Chicago, do you know of or have you ever heard of the Pacific Garden Mission in Chicago?
I don't think so. No.
They have been there since 1877.
Oh my.
They do a radio show called Unshackled, and they produce it right there. Is it on Canal Street, South Street, something like that?
Okay.
Anyway, I run their program out of Chicago on the radio, and I've been doing it for years. So they've been there over 100 years. They are the oldest dramatized radio program in history.
Oh my word! Wow, good for them.
They've been doing this since 1950. So, and what they do is they take real life testimonies and they dramatize it on the radio. So, you hear the sounds and the whole 9 yards. It's like listening to old time radio in the 21st century.
Isn't that neat? Wow, so cool.
But yeah, they're there in Chicago. So there are a lot of good things in Chicago.
There are. I love my city. I do. I hate I hate why we make the news these days. But it is a beautiful city full of really great people.
Well, I liked it until Harry Carey died. Then
Oh God, it was a fixture of Chicago. And you're talking to a Cub fan here, so I get it.
Yeah. Take me out to the ball game. Oh,
that's right. That's right.
We can't even go there now. So
no, we can't go there.
Shame. Listen, Florence Ann, please come back again. Stay in touch with us.
I sure will. It was an honor.
You got all our information, and just reach out to us anytime, and anything we can do to help, you just let us know. And Ed, you got the closing word, buddy.
Well, I'll just say, like I said, this is our first nanny on here. We've had quite a bunch of different professions on here and so on. And so, yeah, that was thoroughly interesting. And out of the fact that the Windy City, I think that was even more fascinating. But yeah, I hope you continue what you're doing. And hopefully some folks on the show pick up the book. It sounds very interesting, honestly.
Oh, well, thank you, Ed. Thank you both for your very kind words. It was so much fun. And I think we conquered a lot of topics here. We did a lot of work here in an hour.
We tried to.
Yeah, we sure did. And enjoyed every minute of it.
Me too.
Really. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, and countrymen, thank you for spending this last hour with us. And as you know, you can come on to the George Espinlove Show page on Facebook, and you can watch this thing over and over as many times as you want to. Please do us a favor. Reach out, start those watch parties, because it gets into your news feed and someone else's news feed, and it just rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls. We live streamed into YouTube. We've live streamed in Twitter, Twitch TV, our Facebook page, and into our blog page. So, but please put this thing out there. Watch party, share it.
Buy the book.
And buy the book. Nanny and Me, Amazon. You can go to Amazon, or you can go right here to Windy City Nanny. I like that. WindyCityNanny.com, and you can. There's a little thingy right there. It says buy copy or something like that. Just click on that, and there you go. You'll have it. And listen, we don't know it all. In fact, the only thing we know is we don't know. So reach out, get some information, put it in there, take it to heart, and let's get the job done. So whether you're down the street, around the corner, across America, or somewhere around this great big world, thank you. From Ed, from Florence Ann, we all thank you. And the whole crazy gang here behind me at the Funny Farm, Charlie over there, and the other people, they're milling around. They're around here somewhere. Gertrude Duflicky, Ernestine, Harvey, the whole gang. We thank you very, very, very much. And our prayer is that God will keep you right in the center of his hand. Until next time, have a good night. See you, everybody.